So a few things we need to be clear about. And I've heard this off and on for years. You start getting into people with severely narcissistic traits or narcissism or even above that, mainly referring to antisocial personality disorder. So if we're going to go by statistics and facts, that tends to be men more often. As many doctors will tell you, that is not 100% of the time. There are women that suffer from those particular mental health issues, but it's more rare. It's far more common in men. Those are the facts. That's the statistics. Especially white men. That all being said, that doesn't mean every white dude you come across is a fucking narcissist or psychopath. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying it's more prevalent in their particular area. But I also see some doctors kind of making a weird, interesting observation. And I'm not saying that they're wrong. I'm just saying, and I don't know the full fleshed out thought process behind it all. I just heard them make statements. They didn't really go into their thought process too much about why that is. And I'm sure they have one. But, antisocial personality, narcissistic personality, they tend to be lawbreakers, major lawbreakers. They spend their entire life in jail, in and out of jail usually. That's very common with the psychopath. So, psychopath, sociopath, they spend a lot of time in and out of jail. They spend their entire life in major legal trouble. I'm not talking about like somebody that made a mistake. Everybody makes mistakes. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people that have spent, usually a good chunk of them from juvenile on. They spent time in juvie. They spent time all their life in jail. That's a pretty good indicator what you're dealing with. So, not always, but it's more prevalent in that. So, and that's all valid. I agree. I never personally spent time in juvie or anything like that. Did I do shithead things as a teenager and a kid? Sure. Every kid does. I don't know anybody that makes it out alive. But, every kid has stuff that they did that made them a little shithead. I'm not really going to go into all that. I didn't do anything really that crazy. But I had my moments as a kid, but I definitely didn't do anything that warranted me going to juvenile detention or anything like that. Anyways, that's all valid. Somebody in and out of jail their entire life from childhood, and they're 40, 50 years old and they're still clocking it in pretty hard. That can be a sign. So, yeah. Now, but they also, some doctors mention that, surgeons, doctors, certain types of doctors and lawyers and certain CEOs, certain types of profession, high powered, high pressure professions, that they have a greater rate of psychopaths. Apparently, you don't have to, but it makes for a better CEO, makes for a better surgeon, makes for a better lawyer to have a certain part of your brain shut off, which psychopaths apparently do, so you can, get down to business and do your thing. So the CEO can lay off 50,000 people, and they still go to sleep at night, and it means nothing to them. They're not, tossing and turning in bed like, oh, what did I do? You know what I mean? So I heard all these people. What did I do? They don't have that in them. They don't think twice about it. They don't care. The thing is if anybody gets to bitch about a bunch of lawyers being a bunch of little shitheads, it's me. I'm the paralegal. Paralegal to lawyer is like nurse to doctor. And I'm not saying every lawyer I've came across is a psychopath. No. There's plenty, but I mean, a lot of them, they play with a funny little line. And it's just like, my divorce lawyer, for instance, I wouldn't classify her anywhere near close to that. She's been there with me through thick and thin. So, she really has. She's a bit of a sounding board for me for when things get too crazy in my life, because a lot of crazy shit does happen in my life. And it's not for lack of trying. It's not for lack of me trying to rein it all in and get it back under control. That's not it at all. People just have a tendency of overstepping their boundaries, overstepping their place in my life, not knowing their role in my life. And, this is where some stuff comes into play, like a common, hood term, know your motherfucking role. You know what I'm saying? Like, know your role, know your place in my life. So, yeah. Because, the boundaries people have crossed in my life, I haven't crossed in theirs. Like, I don't do all that. So, yeah. So if anybody gets to bitch about those lawyers, it's yours truly. So, yeah. Yeah. It's not revenge. It's fed the fuck up. So, yeah. Yeah. But, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it. So, yeah. I'm sure nurses feel the same about doctors. So, some nurses I relate to very deeply. Not because, I did med tech and medical classes, and my minor was psychology. So, I did a lot of med tech and CNA classes way back in the day. And, I excelled at it, I did really well, but, I'm not any nurse or doctor, but I have a medical education. And, yeah, I really relate to some nurses very well. So, yeah, I totally get it. And some doctors, but, yeah, so, but I'm just saying, I'm not against everybody, and that's important to remember.